All right, I got another rule video for Kings and Kaisers for you. This time I'm going to be discussing a element of the movement phase, the primary movement phase, in regards to at-war powers and powers that are neutral. Specifically, in the beginning of Phase 3, the primary movement phase, we have this paragraph here, land and air movement of powers at war and neutrality, on page 18, and then we flip a page on page 20, and we have sea movement of powers at war and neutrality. And I'm mostly going to be talking about this part because this part here is pretty basic, and this will make sense. But this has a few caveats, and it needs a little bit of a clarification for people in general. So I just want to make sure this is crystal clear for everyone. And I'll also touch on this paragraph here in regards to sea movement of the United States while neutral, because they get a caveat of their own, a little exception twist, so to speak, and all that. So anyway, primary movement phase. What I'm talking about specifically is in regards to movement, again, between an at-war power in relation to the neutral major powers and stuff. So if you've played 1914, there isn't much of a political situation with it. Everybody starts at war except for the U.S. And we changed that so to kind of better represent how the war unfolded and all that. So some powers can, depending on what the central powers do and whatnot, some powers won't join until the second round, or in the United States, in the original 1914, they join after round 4 unless specific things happen, like them getting attacked and whatnot. And on our end, in Kings and Kaisers, they join in on round 5 and stuff. And if you're familiar with, BBR and 1940 Global, you're well aware of the political situation between, the political situation in that game, the movement restrictions of the U.S. and Japan, where they can end their sea movement and so on and so forth. Things of that nature. So I'm just going to kind of go over where you can move, where you can move your units if you're neutral, where you can move your units if you're not neutral, so on and so forth. So just to be, again, crystal clear, this little paragraph here about land and air movement, this one's very, very basic. I'll just pop it up here and you can read it. Territories of major powers that are neutral are not yet considered friendly to major powers they will align with once at war. Land and air units of powers at war may never move into territories of major powers that are neutral. Units of major powers that are neutral must stay within their respective territories or adjacent sea zones, may load/offload their units with their transports, and may move through sea zones containing eventual enemy units, but may only end their movement within their original territories or sea zones adjacent to them. Okay, that's really straightforward. So Italy starts the war neutral. They can only, for example, they could only move within their original territories. They can pick up guys, drop them off in Libya if they want to, so on and so forth. They have to stay within this zone, basically. These ships here, they can move up to here. Oh, I had these guys down here as an example that from a previous take. Let me put those guys back. Okay, so these Italian sea units, they can move up here, they can move over here, they can stay here, they can move and come back in this area while they're neutral, right? They do have an Italian colony down over here, Somaliland. However, they cannot go through the Suez Canal while Britain is neutral, and while Britain is neutral, they can't go through that. So basically the Italians are just kind of stuck over here for the meantime, because if Britain's neutral, and because of the turn order, Britain Britain will join if they're neutral at the beginning of the game and they're left out, they'll declare war on round 2. Italy, if they're left out, they'll declare war on round 2. So yeah, it only be basically the first round. Italy is unable to move through that sea zone, right? Okay. Anyway, so again, that was just as an example. So Italy has to like stick within its own territories, right? And you can't fly over. You of course can't fly over neutral powers unless you're attacking them, and so on and so forth, right? So that's very, very basic. So what I'm going to get into mostly then is this portion, the sea movement of powers at war and neutrality. This has a lot more caveats. So, and we have a good example down here. So, sea unit, I read off the previous portion, so I'm going to read off this portion too. Sea units of neutral major powers do not make a sea zone hostile, so sea units of major powers at war may move through sea zones adjacent to any neutral major power, whether they contain neutral sea units or not. However, sea units of power at war may not end their movement in sea zones adjacent to neutral major powers unless these sea zones are adjacent to at least one controlled or contested territory of any at-war power, and the sea zone is free of neutral sea units, with one exception. If a sea zone does contain neutral sea units, then a power may not end their movement in that sea zone unless it is also adjacent to at least one territory that was controlled or contested by the same power at war at the start of their turn. Sea zones that do contain both enemy and neutral sea units may be attacked without engaging the neutral sea units. Powers not at war with each other do not have active sea mines against each other. Units of major powers that are neutral must stay within their respective territories, or adjacent sea zones may load/offload their units with their transports, basically regurgitating the previous portion, and may move through or end their movement in sea zones containing eventual enemy units, but may only end their movement within their original territories or sea zones adjacent to them, with one exception to the United States. See next page, which is over here, and I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a bit. I'll get that in a bit. All right. So, basically, with the example that's right here, the example being the Med. Okay. All right. So Austria-Hungary kicks off the game, and when they kick off the game, I'm just to kind of explain this all in layman's terms. When they kick off the game, Italy is neutral. If Austria-Hungary does not and of course, all of this that I'm talking about goes out the window if Central Powers just declare war on everybody right off the bat, right? That goes without saying. But anyway, if they want to do like a positioning thing to further advance their goals later on down the road, and they're not too eager to get blasted right away, you know? In this situation here, if they do not declare war on Britain, I flipped this over again from a previous example and forgot to flip it back. So if Austria-Hungary does not declare war when they attack on their first round, they have to attack Serbia, so they have to attack somebody. If Austria-Hungary does not declare war on Italy and does not declare war on the British Empire on their first turn, then the only spots that they can move these sea units to are here and here, theoretically. So cruisers can move 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3. Dreadnoughts and transports and submarines can each move 2. So they can move there, and they can move there because they're at war with France. This is adjacent to Italian territories, but the sea zone is also adjacent to French territories who they are at war with, okay? And of course, this cruiser can go and attack there, or just go into the sea zone to try and make it hostile to prevent these 2 transports from loading if they wanted to. Just to spell it out, basically. So they can move there and there. They cannot end their movement in the sea zone with the neutral Italian units. They cannot come over here to sea zone 31 because both Ottoman Empire and the British Empire start neutral, and they cannot go into sea zone 32 here to align Bulgaria because Bulgaria, they don't control it at the start of their turn. If they already controlled it, they would be able to move in there if the Ottoman Empire was neutral. But alas, they have to control a territory to end their sea movement in a sea zone, they have to control a territory at the start of their turn in order to end the movement in that sea zone, right? So they cannot use this transport on the first round to pick up guys and go 1-2 and drop them off in Bulgaria. They can't do that. Here, I'll just move these guys back now. They would, if they declared war against the British Empire, they would be able to come down here and start convoying Britain. They would be able to do that if they verbally declared war against Britain, right? And they can go there even though it's adjacent to Palestine, which the Ottoman Empire would still be neutral, but that basically, because they're at war with them, that basically allows them to move into there. Now, they cannot move into here. They cannot end their movement in here, even if they declare war against Britain, because we have Malta here with a British guy. They can't go into there because there are neutral sea units. However, if, say, they did this, if they came over here, or even if they stayed in the sea zone, and Italy on their turn, because Italy is neutral still, right? Well, this sea zone here, this Austrian sea zone, is still adjacent to Italy, so they'd be able to go in there, and then basically bypassing the mines, they would be able to go in there. Now they're then eventually they're at war with each other, right? On Austria-Hungary's second turn, Austria-Hungary could bring their ships back into here because they control a territory adjacent to that sea zone at the start of their turn. Okay? So this is perfectly fine for them to do. But what they would have to do in order to end their movement in this sea zone with those ships in there, they would have to start off controlling a territory within that sea zone, basically. All right. Basically, I think that kind of covers that. Covers the med situation. These cruisers for the Ottomans would have to, while they're neutral, they can only go here, here, here. Again, no other power can go through Egypt while Britain is neutral. But those cruisers will be able to go here. These Russian cruisers are basically stuck until action starts happening over here. I'm going to get into the Atlantic in a second. Japan, if they're neutral, their ships can go adjacent to any territory they control. Germany or Austria could come up here to this sea zone because it's adjacent to Japan, but it's also adjacent to Russia, right? If Japan moved ships over there, they would not be able to do. They would not be able to do that because it's not adjacent to a territory that they control, even though it's adjacent to an at-war power. Okay. All right. Now let's come back over here. And it's not about moving through territories, sea zones. It's about the end of your sea movement, right? Where can you end your movement? You can, if the British Empire is neutral, let me pan up a little bit. If the British Empire is neutral, Germany, the German fleet can move through this sea zone. Surface ships do not block your neutral surface ships do not block your at-war surface ships. So these ships could go to sea zone 19. And they can go there and end their movement here because it's adjacent to France. It's adjacent to France. They're at war with France, so they can move into here. They cannot move into here if they're not at war with Britain because this sea zone is only adjacent to Britain. That's okay. That's it. Theoretically, these two cruisers, they can move 3. So if you wanted to, as the German Empire, you could send these cruisers down here to take out this French fleet. Now, here's the other caveat. Oh, and you can, of course, end sea movement if you're at war, you can end your sea movement in any, in any sea zone, if it's not adjacent to anything, of course, there's nothing to prevent you from ending your sea movement in there. If you're neutral, however, you cannot end your sea movement in there. You have to end your sea movement. If you're neutral, you have to end your sea movement adjacent to a territory, to an original territory that you control, okay? Anyway. Let me backtrack up here. So if Germany did this, theoretically. And then on Britain's turn, Britain brought ships into here. They could still move through this sea zone, theoretically, but they cannot end their movement in this sea zone. So they could not bring this guy in here because there's ships there. There's ships there now, and these guys here, these ships here can either stay put or they can leave, but you cannot bring another ship and then their movement in here. And part of this is you know, trying to avoid avoid the easy scurrying around the sea mines and things like that, right? You'd be able to move your ships through there. You also wouldn't necessarily need a transport escort. A transport would not need an escort to go through if, you know, Britain's still neutral. Just to throw that out there. So yeah, now here's the other caveat. If in order for it is possible for them to end their sea movement in Sea Zone 20 if France, because France, the French fleet can come up to Sea Zone 20 on their turn. If for some reason the French player decides to do this, they can move up here because this sea zone is adjacent to a French territory, Picardy. It's adjacent to a territory that they control, so that basically allows them to come in here and hang out in that sea zone, which allows the German fleet on their turn to come in here. If Britain is still neutral, they can come in here and end their movement to that sea zone and attack that sea zone and only attack the French units, because the French units basically give them probable cause in order to enter that sea zone. So in that instance, they could kill these units. Let's say maybe they lose a cruiser. Just again, this is an example, without engaging the British fleet. If they wanted to do that, they could do that. Okay, so I'll put this stuff back. So I hope that makes sense with this rule. It is a little difficult to explain it because there's, you know, the different little things that can happen. Let's see. The United States, they have, while they're neutral for a good chunk of the game, they have to stay within their own original territories or adjacent sea zones. So they can come down here because of Puerto Rico. However, and this is what I'm getting at with sea movement of the United States while neutral being lifted, the restriction that they have in the Atlantic, sea zones 1 through 24, theoretically, all the Atlantic sea zones, not not the Baltic Sea, but the Atlantic. If on the United States player's turn, at the top of their turn, if the Central Powers have the Empire Point, which is for the Central Powers, it is the combined IPC value. This is my Empire Point tracker, a Bulgarian roundel, and this is my Allied Empire Point tracker. If the combined income of Germany and Austria-Hungary for the Central Powers is at 85 or higher, that means they have the Empire Point. And if they have the Empire Point, that means they're doing pretty well. And that allows United States to free up their sea movement in the Atlantic Ocean. So then they can start loading their transports and moving stuff out either wherever they want, basically. Wherever they want while they're neutral. Their restrictions are basically lifted, and they can start heading wherever they want. That's this portion right here. Yeah, and the Empire Point, if it is, if say it does not, the whole restriction lift does not revert if the Central Powers lose the Empire Point. So once they've gotten the Empire Point, and again on the United States player's turn, the Central Powers have the Empire Point. Even if they lose it on a later turn, it does not, and the U.S. is still neutral, it does not revert. Okay, so once the restriction is lifted, it's never unlifted. Okay, in the Atlantic. For the United States, just to throw this out here, the Panama Canal is considered closed and operational while while the United States is neutral. It was finished right before the war, but not quite, because of lots of mudslides and a lot of difficult problems they had. So the ships over here for the United States cannot go through the Panama Canal until they're at war with the Central Powers. And so by the time they're at war with the Central Powers, it becomes operational. And then those two ships, or whatever they build on that side, can come through. Okay, that basically I think about does it. Now, just to give a couple other examples, down here in Sea Zone 38, there is a British and a German cruiser that start in the same territory, and of course the British cruiser is neutral, starts off neutral. Now, why can they be in the same sea zone? That's because there's a German territory adjacent to that sea zone, and there is a couple British territories adjacent to that sea zone. Over here, we have a French cruiser adjacent with a British cruiser, British transport here, because there's a French colony here, in addition to the British ones. Britain, while neutral with here, let me get these cards out of the way. If Britain is neutral, this dreadnought or this transport, either of them, I'm going to grab the transport. They can go here, they can go here, they can go here because of these British territories. They can go here, they can go all around these territories, all these sea zones. However, they cannot end their movement here because they have to end their movement adjacent to a original territory of theirs, and there's no territories adjacent to here. So Britain cannot go here, they cannot go here, they cannot go here while neutral, but they can go basically everywhere else in the Indian Ocean, just as an example. Okay, I think I've been rambling enough. I think I've covered it. If you have questions or concerns, feel free to leave them in the comments and get back to me, and I'll get back to you and let you know whatever clarifications are necessary. But anyway, I think I've covered the sea movement restrictions regarding at war and neutral powers and stuff. So there you go. This is a very important rule. This is a very, very important rule if you're trying to, again, keep the British out, the British in particular, or the Italians out of the war as essential powers. So there you go. And I'll get cracking on more videos when I can. But I figured I would just make this one because it does tie into strategy planning for the game pretty significantly. So there you go. Take care and stay tuned for more.